Welcome into another edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined as always on a Monday by Brian Peroni. Brian, thought we were going to be starting out this podcast with some positive news, talking about Ashton Funk, and we will certainly get to that later in the show. But as it always seems to be the case with A&M recruiting this year, it's one step forward and two steps back, and that's certainly the case today on Monday when five-star linebacker Anthony Hill announced his decommitment from Texas A&M. Just a massive blow to the class. Yeah, Brian, happy Monday, I guess. And what do you kind of make of everything going on? I know that's kind of a loaded question.
I know. Yeah, if A&M fans think they're having a bad day, you and I were talking about this off camera.
Yeah.
But Ashton Funk made this big commitment, and he's excited. And it didn't even last for a whole news cycle because Anthony Hill just had to one-up him by decommitting. Now, nobody's remembering Ashton's commitment on Sunday. Man, this is nuts. Started off.
That commitment's a distant memory at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It was
Ashton, but
he didn't even make it 24 hours, and I feel bad because he's a good kid. But and started off this morning was chasing down another network had put out that Bravian Rogers and Javon Thomas were at LSU, so we got it cleared up. They were not there, and LSU's not even really pushing for them. And then you checked on it. You're like, oh, actually, Javon Thomas was at TCU. It's like, okay, that's not, ideal. We knew he was going to visit TCU at some point, but that's not ideal. And then Anthony Hill decommits from A&M early afternoon. It's like, all right, man. So what's coming next? So, not a great day covering recruiting.
No, not at all. And the Javon Thomas part was, we began to hear about that late last week, that TCU has quietly been working behind the scenes on him. And from someone I spoke to over the weekend, he's definitely listening. They've been working to get him on a visit. They tried earlier in the fall. It didn't work out, and confirmed that he did make it into campus on Sunday and spent the day with the TCU staff. Just a one-day visit there, but obviously not ideal. And even at that time, I kind of mentioned on that post before Anthony Hill happened that with the way this season has gone, A&M's lost 5 in a row now, the latest coming against Florida, which, by the way, Anthony Hill was in the stands for. So,
I forgot about that. He's on campus and decommits
he's on
2 days later.
He's on campus for a visit this weekend and decommits less than 48 hours later after watching another debacle on the field. And A&M's going to have to fight to keep this class together. They've got 11 commitments right now. We were kind of talking about, you made the joke on the board that, there's not a whole lot to lose because they've only got 11 commitments to begin with. So
I was going to give fans hope with that. You're like, you won't get too many decommitments, but I mean, so here's the deal. A&M's not good on the field right now.
Yeah,
they've been in it with every game but Mississippi State. I know that's not consolation. I'm not trying to give moral victories, but they've been in it every single game except for Mississippi State. But I mean, they're not good on the field, and there's just so much drama with just suspensions and injuries, and just guys aren't happy. You hear some guys vent their frustrations. There's rumors about portal. So, I mean, it's really hard to recruit right now. So here's the deal. A&M only has 11 commits. They'll probably lose more. It's just what happens when there's, upheaval. I think there'll be some new assistant coaches probably, and that could cause people to look around. But there's just not that many to lose. And I know we were joking about it. That's math, of course. But it's really, there's just not. And looking at the commitment list right now, okay, David Hicks is the highest ranked guy. Oklahoma's working on him. Texas is working on him. When he committed, nobody expected to be A&M, and then it was just sort of like a cherry on the top because A&M has a ton of defensive linemen. Then two of them, I think Dalton Brooks stays. I think Colton Thomason stays. I think Samu stays, Nicole Betran, Tyler White. So, that's half the list right there. And then you have to look at, the ones that are looking around. The most important positions right now are offensive tackle. And I think both the tackles, Chase Masana is probably going to look around some. I don't, who knows if he sticks or not, but he's going to look around. He's not a tackle. He's not the biggest need position. And TJ Shanahan, I just have no idea. I mean, I know he likes A&M, but he has so many offers. this is not with any inside info on him. I mean, but you have to imagine he's at least going to listen to others. But really good player, but again, a guard and not the biggest need position for A&M at the moment. So, and a receiver is the other big one. And well, there are no receivers committed. So, I mean, you look at it, and it would suck to lose, especially top 100 guys if like Bravion Rogers or like Javon Thomas or some of those guys decommitted. But it's not really the end of the world. And I'm not saying this. I know I'm going to be accused of, why are you trying to whitewash this and all that? I'm just trying to, put things in perspective a bit. Yes, it's not ideal. This is a bad situation. It's bad that A&M only has 11 commitments. They should have more than that. They're going to have to use the portal, but they should have more than that a month and a half until early signing period. But, losing the guys, even though they're really good, losing them is not, the worst that it could be. It's not like they have, a 5-star QB that's committed and they're going to lose him, or all these 5-star wideouts. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It almost feels like the one that does kind of sting the most is out of the way now in terms of Anthony Hill, because
that's a neat position.
If you look at it, when A&M lost Harold Perkins last cycle to LSU, the thought was, okay, well, that just makes Anthony Hill a must land at this point. To come away to miss out on Harold Perkins and Anthony Hill now, that's a backbreaker in terms of that position of need. To your point about the defensive line, A&M's loaded along the defensive line. Those guys are all playing quite a bit in the early going already, and so if you can keep that group in the fold together, you'll be all right along the defensive line. Along the secondary, obviously, Javon Thomas would be a big loss if he were to begin looking around. Again, TCU's kind of pushing for him. He's maintained that he is, so as we said with a lot of these guys, they're saying the right things, but you're going to have to continue recruiting them until the early signing period. I agree. They haven't landed anybody at the positions of need to begin with. So often,
you're talking about corner. Javon Thomas is a corner. Bravion Rogers is a corner. Well, A&M signed a bunch of corners. We haven't even seen Bobby Taylor this year. I mean, so we haven't seen what he can do. Smoke Bowie, with him being from Georgia, it could be tough hanging on to him. But if he sticks, you get Marquise Gross-Killebrew back. I mean, they signed some cornerbacks in the last class. So I mean, those guys would be great to have. And you definitely need players, and it never hurts to get potential all conference types. But it's not something that's just going to like devastate you, like if it was, losing some other guys they were counting on.
And totally. And where this gets to, and it goes to a point we've talked about the last couple of weeks on this podcast, hitting the portal just becomes that much more important to be able to get experienced players in. And, Jimbo Fisher seems open to the portal, but then continues to kind of talk about, well, these guys seem to know where they're going before they enter the portal. And
he used that line again today. You can't use that as an excuse not to hit the portal. Like
exactly.
And whatever other schools are doing with their legal back channels, everything's on the up and up. Like I'm not saying do not sue me for libel or slander, Texas A&M. I'm not saying you do this or other schools, but why doesn't A&M do the same? Work those same back channels. If other schools are able to do it, why can't they?
And this goes to another point of you've got to be able to adjust with the times. That goes for the offense, that goes for the defense, that goes for what happens on the field and on the recruiting trail. And if you're A&M and you're looking at the transfer portal, a lot of schools around the country, we've heard about this, that have started to build almost like transfer portal like infrastructure in place. And they've got guys whose only job is to man the transfer portal, be on the lookout for who's in the transfer portal, who might enter the transfer portal, who's rumored to enter the transfer portal, and be aware of all those options. And so when guys do hit the portal, you're ready to hit the ground running. I mean, it's on the basketball side, but Buzz Williams talked about this in their media day press conference and I thought it was a great look into the way a coach has to operate now. And he certainly had his gripes about it, but he said, listen, at the end of last season, he talked to Justin Moore and said, Justin, I'm taking my entire staff on the road. Here we go. And the entire staff hit the road from the moment the season ended until the dead period. And he said somebody was on campus manning the transfer portal, looking to see when new names entered. And this staff basically, the moment they got in the car, get word somebody entered, They were on the phone trying to figure out who their high school coaches are, who their parents are, who the players' numbers are. And it was a team effort. And you look at the success that they had in the portal. It's a chaotic environment, but you have to have the infrastructure to be able to handle it. And it's going to be the same way for football. Everybody kind of talks about, well, who's A&M going to lose to the portal? It's going to be the same around the country, and you just need to be there to take advantage of it when it does happen. There's going to be movement. It's just the way things are right now in college football. And so if you're A&M, you have to be able to have the infrastructure in place to deal with that, to be able to re-recruit your own roster. And right now, you're right. When you're 3-6, decommitments are going to happen. Instability in the class is going to happen. Kids are going to be concerned about whether coaches are going to be there. There's been obviously plenty of talk about the offensive side of the ball. Who's going to be there on that offensive staff at the end of the year remains to be seen. That room could look tremendously different next year. That's going to lead to questions.
I think that's probably going to be the case.
And that's probably going to be the case.
Fans that are frustrated with the offense, I think that's at least some good news we can give you is that the offensive coaching staff will likely look quite a bit different next year.
Yeah, the staff is going to have to take a hard look. They're going to have to see where they are and where they get better. And it's going to be on the A&M staff to correct this, because right now things are going off the tracks, and it's just the way. It's just kind of the way things are, and it's going to be on Jimbo Fisher and the staff. I'm not saying it's beyond solved, but it's going to be on them to really look in the mirror, see that things aren't going well, and go from there.
Yeah. So in the transfer portal era, A&M has brought in, we touched two guys.
Yeah.
Jameer Johnson, and then the second one fell in their lap, came to them, and it was Max Johnson last year. I mean, he and Jake came to A&M. A&M was not planning on taking a transfer quarterback, or they were looking at transfer quarterbacks, but it wasn't set in stone. And then Jake Johnson, they came to A&M, and Jameer Johnson, I don't know how many schools were after him. So yeah, A&M has to get better. Like you mentioned, keeping an eye or an ear out who might enter it and all that. You got to be ready. There are whispers, of all these guys. So yeah, and I mean, with the portal, there are some superstars that enter, from some of the smaller schools, and those are the ones that everybody offers and stuff. But it's not just that. You don't really need that. What you need is experience. I mean, you can recruit high school, but those guys are unproven. You don't have, even if they're a 5-star in high school, you don't know what's, if they're going to pan out. These guys that have proven it at the higher level and either are frustrated with maybe they think they can play at a bigger school, or they aren't getting as much playing time, or maybe they don't like the coaching staff or changing coaching staffs or something like that. Go after them. You need, not every one of your starters is going to be all SEC. You need other guys. And bring that in. And if you look at the, the top ranked teams, they all have brought in quite a few transfers. I mean, they all have. It's just, that's what things have turned to. So A&M is going to have to change that. And they're going to take some, but I think, Fisher going forward, or if somebody else ends up as a coach, I mean, who knows? It's going to have to be, like you said, you put together a portal recruiting staff. A&M has a really good high school recruiting staff, with the coaches. There needs to be a portal recruiting staff that, like you said, follows that all year, keeps their ears out, and just figures out what they need to do there.
Yeah, and I look at a great example is LSU, who A&M's going to play in a couple of years. Or in a couple of weeks.
They'll also play them in a couple of years, to be fair.
They'll play in a couple of years as well. But, a great example, that program was a mess at the end of last year. And, barely had enough players to even play a bowl game. Goes out there in the offseason, hires Brian Kelly. And in the offseason, just basically raids the transfer portal. And they looked for guys that either had a Louisiana connection, were looking to come back home, and some of them were obviously big name players, but others were guys that maybe had SEC experience that were in the transfer portal looking for an opportunity. Joseph Fuchsia is a good example of that. Other guys that had connections to back home that were looking to come back closer to the area, and they were in position to capitalize on a lot of those people. And now they're sitting in the top 10, coming off of a win over Alabama.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. LSU took 15 transfers. Now one was a long snapper from East Carolina. Probably not on scholarship,
Yeah.
but still he came.
Was he a transcendent long snapper though? That's
I don't know if he was that, but
that's what we have to. That's the only question. But they were in position. They recognized they had to get a ton more depth in place with guys that had played and guys that could bring experience to a locker room. That's the other part of it. You need guys that are going to bring experience to the locker room and be able to step forward in a moment like this and be able to keep guys in check and be able to keep their room and lead by example. And that's just something A&M's playing a lot of young players, and they're all kind of learning on the fly. And I thought it was encouraging, and whether it's actually the case or not, Jimbo Fisher is saying that a lot of these young players had given positive feedback about the direction they felt like the program was going. That's great news if that's 100% the case. But
it could be coach speak. You never really know. It could be coach
speak, but in today's day and age, like, if they're really sticking through a 3-6 season and really feel positive about the direction, that's good. That's good news, and they'll be better for it. Exactly like he said. But I think A&M could still use that veteran leadership to really kind of guide them through these tough times.
Yeah, and I think even in the freshman class, though, you got to have some people keeping others accountable. Encourage. We talked about this before. Every freshman, no matter if they're from 10 minutes down the road or 10 hours, away, every freshman gets homesick to an extent. Yep. If you're used to being not just a starter but a star your entire life, and then you come to college and you either barely play or don't play, you're going to get frustrated. And if you're losing, you get frustrated. So there are frustrations. Every school has them, but A&M is going to have more this year because, one, the players are from all over. They also had more 5 stars, than anybody else ever. And that, 5 stars are the ones who really want to play. So A&M's going to have people frustrated, but you got to, like Bryce Anderson. Bryce Anderson had a great freshman year. But I don't think a lot of people know just like his attitude. He's a lot like Aniyah Smith. I had made this point on the board earlier today. A lot like Aniyah Smith was his attitude. Puts his nose down, goes to work. And Aniyah has really sort of united the locker room a bit. Bryce has that ability. He's not as vocal though. But if he steps up, and if Bobby Taylor, who did a great job recruiting guys and who still tries to recruit guys, if he can basically, I'm using air quotes, recruit his teammates to stay, things like that can go a long way. You got to figure out, the Cam Dewberries of the world that are, enjoying or, that understand that sometimes times are tough, but, things are likely to get better. You got to have those guys really, work their best to, hey, give it one more semester, give it this, and people
see where things are sitting.
They come to feel more comfortable with the school, and they're like, okay, I'm bought in. So they really need those guys to step up.
No, for sure. And I think Bryce Anderson's a great example of kind of that leadership, and a guy that's, him and Cam Dewberry have kind of seen their playing time progress over the course of the year, have established some of those good practice habits. And there's been good news as well. We've been looking at today and kind of mentioned this to you when I was going through the stats, and I know you kind of noticed this as well. Yeah. One of the big questions coming into the year was about, well, would A&M be able to throw the ball? Would A&M be able to get the ball to Evan Stewart? That's all we heard about all the way up until fall camp. Well, Evan Stewart's now sitting right up there in the SEC in yards per game receiving. I think you mentioned he's second in the SEC in catches this year.
Yeah, so he's he's third in receptions, but he also missed a game. So they're using him. They can point to that to other receivers, be like, hey, if you got the talent, we'll use you, even if we don't pass for. Well, Haynes King manages to throw for like 300 yards when he comes in. They don't win those games, but he always manages to throw for 300.
They've got 2 top 10 receivers. Not bad for where they are. And, there's some positives. I thought, again, Le'Veon Moss kind of showed some flashes when he was in there the other day. And I just wish they would use him more, but, had some good moments and flashed a little bit. If you can keep these guys together and give it a run for another year, they're going to be better for this experience. And so I think that's got to be kind of the message. And like we said last week, if you can at least, it looks a little more bleak now, somehow find a way to beat Auburn and somehow find a way to beat UMass and see where you
not somehow. Hold on, not somehow find a way to beat UMass. Okay, here's the deal: if A&M loses to UMass, they need to just blow up the Bright Compass.
Yeah.
UMass is dead last in the CBS 1-131. They They did give UConn a bit of a scare this weekend before UConn pulled away. UConn is not good.
Yeah.
Okay, if they find a way to beat UMass.
Beat UMass. That was a misspeak. Beat UMass.
How about beat UMass handily?
Yeah. Beat UMass handily. That should have been what I said the first time. Beat Auburn and then find out what happens against LSU at the end of the year.
A&M players, I will tell you, okay, LSU's going to be favored, and A&M's at home, though, and LSU's been playing well, but they have a bunch of freshmen, too, and, they make some mistakes, and, I mean, A&M players do get up for that game, other than LSU's national championship year. A&M players get up for that game.
Get up for that one.
I'm not trying to be sunshine pumper, and I'm not trying to, you just make all these apologies, but it's not out of the question.
It's not, and, it'll be it could well be a big night at Kyle Field. I'm sure A&M fans, regardless of how bad it's going, definitely do show up and do their part. So we'll see how the next 3 weeks of the year go, and then this staff has just got to recruit their tails off for the next year, and you get another chance at the next year, but there better be some changes, and there better be a deep look in the mirror, just like we talked about before the season. If they fell short of expectations, there was going to have to be a deep look in the mirror. And I think that's kind of where things stand now. We'll at least get to the good news after the break. There was some good news on the recruiting trail, like we mentioned, and with a bit of a surprise commitment on Sunday. So we will definitely get to that good news right after a quick break. Welcome back into the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Peroni. Brian, I thought we were going to be leading the show with this today, and thought we were going to have at least some good news to kind of talk about, and that is Ashton Funk announced his commitment to Texas A&M on Sunday, an offensive tackle like we were talking about. Big need in this class from Katie Tompkins, and A&M legacy in the 2024 class. He's the second commitment in that class, joining Dylan Evans. Drove up like you mentioned. You got to talk to him. Drove up to the A&M staff on Sunday and delivered the good news. What do you make of this commitment for A&M?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that he wanted to be an Aggie, and I mean, when I asked him, I was like, I know it's a ways till your signing day, so are things, is the recruitment still going to be open a bit? He just matter of factly, he's like, no, my recruitment's over. I'm done, 100%. Wanted people to know that, and some kids say that, but it was pretty forceful. It's sort of like the way Colton Thomason has talked. Yeah. So I expect him to stay. I mean, this is a kid that had 30 offers, the Alabamas, the Georgias, actually, I don't know if Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma,
Michigan,
Michigan, a bunch of other schools. He had offers from all over the country. Big get. He's ranked every service has him as a high 3-star right now. Now, I would expect that to change going forward, to go up, because he hasn't put out his film. I got to get on him about putting out film, because right now it's only the sophomore film in the huddle.
Somebody asked me about that, and I noticed his district film is labeled as private. I've never seen a school do that before, but
it might be his coaches. Some schools do that because they don't want opponents to get a leg up. It's like, come on, you know how easy it is to get film these days. It's not back in my day when the coaches used to meet halfway and trade VHS tapes for the playoffs. Giving them tape. It's really easy to get film now, but we have to get on him about making that public. But once he gets film, that's out there, that's going to help a ton with the ranking. Just his play as a junior. He did well as a sophomore, but it was more, there's a 6'7" kid, 285 that is built well. Well, he's now played like that as a junior. Tompkins is 8-2 going to the playoffs. He played against David Hicks and Damian Sanford on Friday night, and they won pretty handily. So he's gone up against some good players. And a pure offensive tackle, a left tackle type. A&M doesn't. Now he's built a little like Trey Zune, a little taller, but sort of has that build. But I think he probably moves a little better than Zune, especially with Zune coming off that ACL injury his senior in high school. So, he's definitely got the potential to man that left tackle spot at A&M, which is huge. Now, he's only a junior, so it'll be another year before that happens, but it's, it's a good get.
People have asked on him, is he a true tackle? He's 6'7" right now. In the 285 range, I believe, is where we had him measured in. And he's definitely a true tackle and kind of exactly what A&M needs on that front. And you can have the debate on whether him or Michael Luini is the best offensive tackle in the state, and that'll probably be a debate that goes on over the next year and a half. But for A&M, it's a big get to get in the class right away. Have at least one of those tackle spots locked down in the class, because we've talked about this ad nauseum on the board too, that it's tough to find offensive tackles right now, and it's tough to find guys that come with that frame, that can play with that length and size. And so to get one, I know recruiting is not in a good spot right now, but to have him in the fold and to have him as committed. And I think the other point to keep in mind when it comes to him is he comes from an A&M family, grew up watching A&M football, and decided this is where he wants to go. And there was a comment on the board from somebody who said, it's those that kind of commit during the tough times that you kind of know are going to be the ones that kind of stick and stick through the tough times. He's a guy.
Yeah, when I woke up Sunday morning after that Florida game, I was not expecting to cover a commitment on Sunday. You're like, wow. You and I should read the message boards. A&M may never get a commitment again. So what are you doing, Ashton?
I'm busy, kind of trying to track down whether Javon Thomas visited anywhere over the weekend. And all of a sudden on Twitter, the Ashton Funk news kind of popped around, and it was a pleasant surprise. It really was. And it's a big deal for this A&M staff to be able to get him in the fold. As bad as things look right now, having him and you keep Dylan Evans, I think A&M's probably going to have to fight TCU for that one as well. I did hear he kind of has some TCU ties as well, so I don't expect TCU to go away.
You're talking about Dylan Evans, right?
Dylan Evans, yeah. I don't expect
TCU recruits East Texas really well.
Yeah.
And so
whether they were able to get him, I haven't heard whether they were able to get him on campus this weekend, but I think that's certainly going to be a school that doesn't let up on him going into next cycle. But so to have Ashton Funk and if you can start to maybe generate some traction in that class, some of these recruiting visits are going to be big. And I will say, when it looks at the 2024 class as a whole, if there are staff changes over the offseason, and that's certainly what we kind of expect right now, the staff is going to be able to kind of build off that. And the questions are going to more turn to, okay, well, what does A&M look like under this new staff? That's from you and I covering recruiting. That's kind of where the questions always kind of turn to is, okay, well, what's the group going to look like under a new coach? Where you get yourself in trouble is when you sit there and say, that things are just going to turn around. That's kind of where A&M's got in this with this wide receiver spot and where they've got to. They just haven't really recognized that a change was needed there. And credit to James Coley, the receiver play has been better this year with him kind of leading that group, and kind of goes to what we talked about having two receivers in the top 10. There's been
Moose was like, almost an afterthought coming into the season. I mean, he's had, especially the last few games, has really come on. And I think Coley has a lot to do with that.
I think so too. And so recognizing that there's a change, and so the narrative, I think, can kind of shift around the receiver position heading into next year. If you have an offensive coordinator in there, I think A&M will be able to kind of survive around that, as long as, and they can sell Connor Wigman too, and they can sell being able to play with Connor Wigman if he continues to look really good over the last couple of games. And so we'll see what the future holds for 2024 recruits, but getting Ashton Funk is definitely a great start along that offensive line. And I think the other part to mention is he is close with Daniel Cruz as well, so another big target for A&M in that class.
Yeah, get an offensive guard type from Dallas area, from Richland. I mean, that'd be another really good get. Another guy that'll probably go up in the rankings. And there's some other good news for this half of the segment. Now, my phone's right here. It's been on silent, but I do look down at it every once in a while, checking the text messages and
Yep.
stuff. As far as I know, there have not been any decommitments during this.
Hey,
during
look, there we go.
the recording of this. Sorry to make light of it, but I think a lot of people have
there
been
we go. 30 minutes.
Ever since the Appalachian State game, and then obviously ever since this. Is it 5-game losing streak now?
Yeah, 5-game losing streak.
I think people have sort of, mailed it in a bit and stopped, obsessing over individual recruits. So we can make light of that.
Yeah, we can make light
bit.
of it.
If it was like Florida when they lost, the 5-star recruit, he wasn't a commit, but the 5-star recruit when he committed to Miami, he was a Florida legacy. Yeah. So when that happened, I don't think Florida guys could have gone on a podcast and made jokes at that point. But when everything's going wrong, it's like that. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Like, didn't have anybody. Decommit during our
in the last 30 minutes. Yeah. See, we're trying to bring the good news where we can around here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of
I've always been accused of being a huge A&M homer and sunshine.
I know you have.
So just trying to keep up the.
Keep
up the appearances.
Can we please proofread because you sent everybody into a panic already on the board with.
So I type when Hicks decommitted. It's just you type and you type HI and it just
decommitted to be clear.
It just went it just might automatically. Like, was that a Freudian slip? No, it wasn't. Literally just my fingers are used to typing one thing.
Exactly.
And also I was just showing how Anthony Hill was already dead to me. I'm kidding. He's a nice kid too. He's a nice kid.
He's a really good kid, and it's one of those things. I do think if A&M is having a better year on the field, he definitely sticks. But when you start having these sorts of results, even a couple of weeks ago we were talking, and he wasn't interested in talking about Texas at all. But when you lose 5 straight, that's where things start to go. And he was totally solid until this season started to kind of unravel a little bit. The good news, though, is we do have if you listen to this on Monday, the A&M basketball season does kick off tonight, and we'll have coverage of that 7 p.m. against
Come next week, and I will break down all the basketball action like only I can. I'll maybe even give you some MS Paint drawings to really show where things went right or wrong.
You never know where this podcast is going to go. I think in April we had the whiteboard stats out and kind of.
Oh, I'll do it. I'll give you some Brian Peroni MS Paint in-depth basketball analysis.
It's absolutely
that's coming for you.
What people to come to this podcast for, Brian.
Yes, exactly.
And just checking around on A&M did have a big visitor in town as well this weekend, Bryce Lindsay. Sounds like he's moving closer towards a decision. A&M, West Virginia, and Villanova are the 3 schools in the mix there, and
that's what I'm hearing too.
Yeah, that's what Brian.
Never heard of the kid. Yeah. I just want to let you know you're on the right track. I'm hearing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of hearing the same, and if you haven't seen Brian's crystal balls, no, Brian's got crystal balls coming for all the basketball targets for A&M.
Exactly.
For the
didn't somebody say there has
cycle?
There's not been an A&M crystal ball since like the 2020 class or something.
They haven't recruited a whole lot.
They keep going in on the transfer portal. I'll go throw some in. I haven't heard of this guy. Who does LeBron have a kid? I'm gonna put him. Bronny's going to A&M. You heard it here first. Remember, I willed Walter Nolan and what's the name, the quarterback, Malachi Nelson, into existence. So, I heard Bronny James is coming. So, it's the rumor.
Looking at the number 2.
Who's the number 2 player? You're right.
In this cycle,
that's one of my calls.
That's one of Brian's calls. Is
I couldn't even name the number 1 player. I was trying to think of a name.
Justin Edwards, a small forward that's currently committed to Kentucky.
Oh yeah, I've heard he's flipping. He's going to visit A&M. I've heard it. It's the rumor. Somebody's going to play just this clip. It's going to be on Old Takes Exposed.
somebody's going to bring just this out. But no. Yeah. But I have heard Bryce Lindsay. See, now I'm thinking about Bryce Lindsay is moving closer to a decision. Kind of looking at the early signing period. Was on campus for an official visit this weekend. I've heard at least from the A&M side that things seem to go pretty well on that front. There's some confidence around where they stand. We'll see how things go. Basketball recruiting can always be a bit unpredictable, but should have more on that in the next couple of days as we move towards the early signing period, which is coming up in just a couple of days now. I think
Yeah,
it's
that's
next
this week. Not for
this
football,
week.
the other sports.
Not for football, for basketball. It's coming up really soon. So we'll definitely have more on him coming up, and be back next week to break down Auburn and look ahead to the mighty UMass game, and see and whatever else is coming on the recruiting trail in the next couple of days. Texas high school football playoffs get going this weekend, so we'll be out at those. And thanks again to everybody for tuning in. Those who are tuning in and keeping engaged with the podcast, we really appreciate, even in the midst of a really tough season. And be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button to get a notification every time a new video drops. And until then, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you guys soon.